So I have a premise that with the Enlightenment came the concept of progress, and that progress became an end in itself in the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment stands at least on two pillars. One, that the past, or I should say the future, or the present is always superior to the past, and the way to knowledge is reason only. I'm not concerned with the last. I am concerned with the first, for I think it is the one place where evangelicals have not thought through the implications of how progress has influenced our culture. And so that's really what I'm going to argue for. I shouldn't say argue, because it's not going to be a very strong argument, but I will raise some possibilities about this matter of progress and what we now see in our cultures, and particularly in the Western world, but not just in the Western world, because it's just about everywhere I look. I don't just lecture in Eastern Europe, in Europe as a whole, also in Africa, as well as in the States. Now, with this notion that new is always better than what is old, what we have then is eventually what will develop is this idea that choices are everything. Now, you think about today, what does your culture want to give you? Choices. And if you can think of a sort of as a microcosm of all of this, look at the mall. The mall is a clear example of modernity, where you go in, you have choices, right? You have multiple stores, they're all under one roof, and you are the consumer. And everything is set up to make sure you remain the consumer, all right? So you go to the mall and you're thinking, well, I'm just going to go and buy a pair of shoes. But when you leave the mall, you have packages much larger than would accommodate a pair of shoes. Why? Well, because the ethos of consumerism, and we'll talk a little bit about that, really influences our behaviors. Now, what I want to show is how that is in culture, and now how it has made its way into the church, and how is it affecting the church as a whole. Now, so one thing that progress gives us are choices. The second thing is, if you're going to have progress, then you've got to make you must have some way to measure it. Okay? How do we know that we've moved forward? Well, we do it by twin criteria. One of them is convenience, and the other one is efficiency. Now, obviously, all of us love convenience, right? And we all like efficiency. But I'm going to argue that ethos, which we'll call the ethos of consumerism, is really pretty much contrary to the Christian way of living. How is it that if these are the twin criteria for when progress happens, and now progress is everything, and that gets into the church, I think it's no wonder that we find young people who lack little sense of commitment, and certainly very minimum commitment to sacrifice. Why not? Because even in the church, these ideas of efficiency and convenience are very much creating what I would call the ethos of consumerism in the church. And now the church leaders are going to come back and say, but we're still preaching the same message. And I'm going to say, which do you think has more power over your congregants? The message you preach or the ethos you have created? And I will tell you that, not in every case, but it is the ethos that is created. Now, I've been was a pastor for 30 years. I taught, that was my second job, and then someday I just decided that I'd done enough pastoring, and now I just teach full-time. Now, when we think about efficiency and convenience, that brings up another problem. Or at least it seems to be a problem, and that is, how do we measure convenience and efficiency? And that, we then see a shift, and the shift moves from measuring things qualitatively to measuring things quantitatively. So when do we know that we've been efficient in the church? Well, it's when we have reached more people than we reached yesterday. Now, I'm not against reaching many people, but what ends up happening is that if we look at a program, we only look at the program in terms of quantitative measurement. That is convenience and efficiency, but how do we know when we've achieved that? Well, we have a bigger building, we have more people, we have more money in the coffers, and while I'm not suggesting that those are bad in and of themselves, what is now missing so often even in the church, to say nothing of our culture, is the whole idea of the qualitative, what we generally call character. So you can't measure character with a great economic calculator. Okay? So we try to do that. So this ethos of consumerism, and I've suggested where you kind of get the idea of it by looking at the mall, where merchants of cool peddle their latest and new product. That will cause humanity to flourish, they tell us. Think about this. Think when Apple says to us, we now have, now I'm pretty bad on technology, so you'll just have to excuse me, but Apple says we're going to have a new iPhone, right? Now the fact of the matter is it's iPhone 0.005, that's the newest. Now the fact is that iPhone 0.005 really isn't any better than the iPhone 0.004, but guess what? It's new. So people will line up 2 nights before or so, camp out, in order to get what? A better product? Not necessarily, but they will get a new product. So that kind of gives you what's going on in our larger culture. And I would say, if you look at in the church, where do we see that sort of thing developing? It's, well, the pastor goes off to a seminar and he gets a new product, he gets a new method. And we scrap the old method and we put in a new method. We're always looking for the new. And then when you think about preaching, oh, the poor preacher is always got to be coming up with something new. I mean, who wants to preach the old stale historic message of the gospel? Something new. Well, why do we have to do that? Well, because the congregants are used to that every day in their of their life. So I would argue that this ethos of consumerism has made its way into the church, and it disorders and interferes with a sense of peace and contentment. I say it makes us as humans like a song that's sung off tune, because it diminishes humanity to merely a consumer, where a person is sacrificed for profit, where beliefs are more likely to be talked about than acted upon. And I could give some examples. The ethos overpowers the good judgment, just as it does in the mall, and we do not ask, and here's a key question, what is gained, what is lost? That's always a key question to be asked. What is gained, what is lost? If I'm going to take on something new, what is gained, what is lost? Now, if you only answer that question in qualitative terms, quantitative terms, I think it's going to skew your evaluation of what you're going to accept. I think you must also consider the fact of the qualitative. Now, I think evangelicals have warned well against materialism of the age, but they did it all the while they were embracing standards of efficiency and convenience that were driving the materialism. So on the one hand, there's this strong argument against materialism, and yet the ethos that we build in the church is very much an ethos of consumerism, which encourages materialism. So church accept the controlling ideas of convenience and efficiency and assessing the use of technology in the church. Again, I want to say I'm not against technology. I'm not a Luddite, and I'm not against things that are efficient, and I'm not against things that are convenient. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that when they become the sole standards by which we make decisions about how we do church and how we live our lives, I just think they are impoverished criteria for such an important decision. So we end up having, the church ends up having to cater to people who have lived 6 days of their life under the ethos of consumerism. So when they come into church, they've got to have a lot of choices, right? They've got to know how many Sunday school classes or whatever you call them do we have to have. Well, we've got to have one for everybody who wants a different thing. No, I don't go to this church because they don't give me enough choices. There's only 2 Sunday school classes, and I need more than 2 Sunday school classes. And so the church has to accommodate. Now, I think the church's ideas, its intentions are impeachable, and I think they're right. But I think it's the uncritical behavior that brings the spirit of progress within the church, which I would say really stands against the ethos of the kingdom of God, which is an ethos of commitment and sacrifice. I could go on to say how they have actually been using it, that is technology, but let me just, without talking about particulars, raise this question of what does technology do to us? See, there are 2 questions that need to be asked. One, what is gained, what is lost? The other question is, there's another question. Hopefully it comes to me. What is technology doing for us, and what is technology doing to us? Technology is doing something to us as well as for us. So we must ask that question. How has technology shaped your view of reality? Enormously. I'm going to suggest that when I think about technology, I'm going to think mainly of media technology. I'm not talking about medical technology. I'm not talking about technology that can build a nice building or anything like that. Primarily, I'm talking about media technology. Okay? Unfortunately, I think that the church thinks that as long as their message has stayed the same, that all is well. There is this general view that the medium has nothing to do with the message. And I think a strong case can be made that the medium is a message. So if you think about social media as an example, Facebook, I say, oh my, we're not going to get another diatribe against Facebook. Well, but what I would say is that we are now thinking that a friend is somebody who follows us on Facebook, but that's redefined the whole concept of friend. I could mention some others, but time is not going to permit. But the concern I have is that the church simply says, oh, we'll use this and we'll use that, without ever asking the question, what is gained, what is lost, or what is that doing to us, and what is it doing for us? Now, I'm not going to make a case here, but I just raise this as another concern. Simulcast. So a pastor sits in one building and preaches, and then it is telecast to maybe 3 or 4 other locations. And so the people sitting in that audience are hearing the same message, right? Same pastor, same man speaking. They're hearing the same message, but they're not hearing the same message. They're getting the same information, but the pastor who's preaching is actually reacting to his congregation. He's watching faces. You just do this naturally. And so he's shifting, and the people in the audience can actually see the pastor. But those on simulcast get none of that. So I'm saying you aren't delivering the exact same thing. Now, maybe I'm not saying that's bad, I'm only saying we need to be thinking about, well, what is gained, what is lost. Certainly it's efficient, and certainly it's convenient. But is that really all there is to it? I think if unchecked in time, I'm wondering what will actually happen to our preaching if we are only concerned about delivering information. Now, those of you, any of you in education, you know education is coming under the same kind of a problem, I would, whole distance learning and all the rest of it. I think in the end, faithfulness to Christ as the truth must guide our steps, and faithfulness at its very deepest level, commitment to our God, where sacrifice and challenge everything on the easy road of convenience and efficiency, no matter what we think it buys us, and that we must live this way even if it makes us fools for Christ. We think, where do we stand against our culture? We always think, oh, I'm going to stand against the culture. You know, I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to chew, and I'm not going to go with those who do. I'm not going to watch television. No. But maybe there's a place for all of that. But we aren't giving any attention to what is going on technologically in our culture that is actually affecting us as evangelical Christians. I think we have to think about everything. Anytime we are going to say, oh, we're going to do this, we need to ask ourselves the question, are we only evaluating something new on its quantitative benefits? Have we asked ourselves the question, what is gained, what is lost? Have we asked ourselves the question, how is technology, not only what is it doing for me, but what is it doing to me? Now, the whole thing of community, right? But if we begin to, you know, if we think that we can actually, I know churches now who actually counsel using Facebook. And I really raise a question about that. What is lost to this concept of face-to-face? You know, Lewis had this great saying that friends walk side by side, lovers face-to-face. Is there something that is gained in face-to-face communication that cannot be gained any other way? Now, here I am talking about that, and we're going to be taping this, and there are going to be people watching it. So I'm not saying, you know, we ought to just, you know, tear apart everything and go back to sandals and robes and walk everywhere we go. I'm not saying that at all. I am asking us as evangelicals to think a little more carefully and more critically about what we employ and how we employ it. It just might be that we're going to say, this is not that good for us. The gain is not worth what we're losing or what it's doing to us. So, and just as I stop, let me say there's this, there are churches, for example, who now allow you to give your tithe, whatever you call it, by bank draft. Okay, now you can't deny that's efficient, right? And it's surely convenient. But what does it do with the whole concept of giving? I don't have to think about it, right? I just tell my church, here's my bank number, just draft whatever you need every month. But I'm asking, what does it do to the physical notion of actually giving? So that's just kind of an example of what I'm thinking.